Missed it.
So, I'm going to be talking about video interviewing today because I want to make sure that everybody is comfortable and confident and really aces the video interview. We are in the middle of the pandemic still. The video interviews are not going away anytime soon. And as a matter of fact, they were already increasing before the pandemic. Video interviews make it super simple for recruiters to interview people. It saves them time and energy, and it saves you from having the stress and anxiety of driving to a location and meeting with people. It doesn't mean that eventually you won't have an in-person interview. It is quite possible when we get back to normal that you will have in-person interviews. But for the foreseeable future, video interviews are what we're going to be dealing with. And so it's just a matter of getting more comfortable and confident and being able to rock your video interview. So I'm going to talk to you about the steps to take before, during, and after your video interview, how to answer some common interview questions. And this is not unique to video interviewing, but these are some questions that you probably will be asked and you want to prepare answers to, and I'll share some secrets. And then what questions should you ask to show interest in the role? So it's an overall a sort of interviewing primer, but it definitely is heavy on the interviewing spectrum, like the video interviewing. So raise your hand. Tell me if you really love interviewing. Oh, yay, Janine, right? I would say you're in the minority. I would say the vast majority of people become a nervous wreck when they think about interviewing. And when you're a nervous wreck, you don't come across as well as you should. So let's think about what you can do to level this playing field. I want you to feel confident, and I want you to feel like this interview is no big deal, because the interview is just a mutual exchange of information. That's all it is. It's a conversation. The employer wants to know these three things. Can you do the job? Will you do the job? And do I like you? That's all. Simple. And you, as the job seeker, interviewee, want to know the exact three same things. Can I do this job? Will I enjoy doing this job? And will like working there? So as you can see, we're both, you and the employer, are looking for the exact same three things of information. So it's a conversation. They want to learn about you and you want to learn about them. So what's there to get nervous about, right? That's it. It's a conversation. I hope that is step one to making you feel a little bit more comfortable with this process, because I don't want you to be nervous. Here is the next thing that you can do that will make you feel more comfortable and confident before your next interview. Obviously, you're going to need to research the company and the people who work there, right? It's not. It's not enough just to say I've got an interview coming up. You need to go to LinkedIn and to Google and to the company website and make sure you learn enough about the company so that you can feel confident answering the question. So what do you know about us? Because they are likely to ask you that question. What do you know about us? You need to be able to answer that question. So do enough research that makes you feel like you could answer that question. The other thing that will make you feel more comfortable is, what are the questions that you need answered during this interview? If you were to accept that job tomorrow, what do you need to know before you walk in that door? What are the questions you want answered? And it's more than just how much are they going to pay and what are the benefits. You really want to understand, what does a day in this job look like? Who will I be working with? What are the backgrounds of the people that I'm going to be working alongside? What tools do I need to do my job well, right? There are lots of questions that you need answered. Some of those questions, a large majority of those questions, will get discussed during the interview. The interviewer will mention them, but some of them they won't answer, and you're going to want to ask them. Um, and of course, One of the things that will make you so much better at the interview is if you practice out loud. It's one thing to practice an answer in your head, it's another thing to practice out loud. So there are two tools now that you have. First and foremost is any kind of video interviewing, because the more you practice talking to the camera, the better you will get. Um, but the other tool that you should know about, and most people don't know about, is LinkedIn's mock interviewing tool. It's free, 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 free to anybody with a LinkedIn profile. Right now, I don't have a paid account. I have the free profile. So if you were looking at your LinkedIn profile, it's right up there under the jobs box, the jobs tab. Click on that and you will see the more button. And underneath that, you will see practice interviewing. And so you can give your camera on your laptop or device access, and can record your answer, and evaluate it using artificial intelligence, or you can type in your answer and it will be evaluated by artificial intelligence. So there are two ways that you now know how to get practice with your interviews, either using another friend or family member on Google Meet, right? Google Meet, and or LinkedIn, because practice is the name of the game. Great athletes that were getting ready for the Olympics in this summer, which breaks my heart that they were canceled. But those Olympians have been training their whole life. They know exactly what move they're going to make when, so that when they're under the pressure and the stress of competing in the Olympics, it's like they don't even need to think about it. Muscle motion takes over, right? I want you to go into the interview with the same level of confidence and have practice as much as an Olympic athlete, because then you're going to be not worrying about this. You're going to know that you're going to do it at the best of your ability. You're going to do great. So practice, you can't practice enough. So the one thing that I don't think enough people do before the interview, and I want to make sure that you all are prepared for this interview so that you're not caught off guard, is before the interview, ask the interviewer, either in an email or on the phone if that's how they're doing it, what the format of the interview will be. And they know enough to answer that question. But really, what you're wanting to know is, will I be having a one-on-one conversation? Or will there be a lot of other people on the other end of that Zoom call or across the table from me if it's an in-person one day? What the format of the interview is. Is it going to be one-on-one or is it going to be multiple? There are some cases where companies are sending you a link to a one-way interview. And a one-way interview is where it's completely recorded. The question pops up on the screen and then the prompt is, when you're ready to give your answer, hit record. And you record your answer. So all you're doing is you're not even talking to a real person, you're talking to the camera. And when you're done answering, you stop talking, it will say, would you like to review your answer or do you want to go on to the next question? If you review your answer, it will give you the option to re-record it and do it over again. So that's what we call a one-way interview. And there are a lot of people who don't like them, but again, it's a huge time-saving piece for the people that don't have enough time to schedule a mock interview or a real live interview, video interview with everybody. So those are some of the things. If you're asking what the format of the interview will be, they will provide you with that information. The other question that you can't just assume they will provide to you is, who will be attending this interview? Ask for the names of people who will be in that meeting, that interview. They may not know, but at least you've made your request for information publicly known. It shows that you are interested and concerned and that you're organized about how you're going to go about this job search. It's absolutely within your right to know who you're going to be interviewing with. I don't want you to think that that's not something that you should know. You absolutely should know that, and it is absolutely okay to ask for that information. The other question that you want to know the answer to is how long the interview will last. That is probably, we can't assume. It could be 15 minutes, it could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour, it could be a half day. You don't know. So that's why you have to ask the question, how long should you expect? If you're asking all three of these questions before the interview, there's very little that's going to catch you off guard. I can tell you stories of people who thought they were going in for a 1 hour interview back before COVID, and it actually turned out to be a full day interview. They didn't leave the house with the expectation that they were going to be gone all day. So, in the back of their mind, they're worrying about the kid getting off the bus and coming home to an empty house, making dinner for your kid that has an event that evening. So, they were not at their peak performance because of all of these other things they didn't plan for, and then they were going to have to solve. So always ask how long the interview will last. Those are three pieces of information are absolutely entitled to ask. So far, is there any other information that you worry about or wonder about when you go into an interview that you want to know about? Anything else that I can ask for you? I now have my chat box open. I didn't have it open before. So if you have questions as we are going through today's this presentation, please, please, please put it in the chat, and Stacy will let me know. And so we're going to talk about dress code for the company, Melanie. It In a video interview, it's not quite as important because they're only going to see you from the top up. But we will talk about dress code for a video interview here in a second because it is a good question to ask. No matter what they tell you, you're going to sort of take one level higher. We'll talk about that. Okay, so here we go into the before the video interview. Um, One of the things that you might have the ability to do, if you know that it's going to be a Zoom interview or it's going to be a Google Meet or something else, is to test the video interview technology in advance, which means you know how to use the mute button. You know how to mute and unmute yourself. You know how to start and stop your video. You know how to use the chat function, and you might want to see if there's any other functionality that that system or software has that you want to get familiar with. The challenge is you don't want to be in the middle of a video or logging into your video interview and not being able to figure out how to unmute yourself, or that your video isn't coming on and you can't figure out how to turn it on. You want to be familiar with that, the general software, or if not that specific software. And I will tell you this, if you understand how to turn your video on and off on Google Meet, and you know how to do it on Zoom, you're probably going to be okay figuring out how to turn it on and off on almost all the other video technology that's being used, because they're very similar. But if you can do it on those two, then you're going to be that much more prepared for this third version of software that you might have to use, right? Because they all become similar after a while. The other thing, chat is really important. I have a recruiter tell me a story that they couldn't hear the person, they couldn't see the person, but they were able to open up the chat box and chat with the person so they could troubleshoot the video audio problems and actually get the interview to happen. So if everything else fails, if you can figure out how to use chat, you can at least have that conversation with the recruiter or the person that you're trying to work with. Um, so I always recommend logging in, and then I think this is on the next slide, but logging in about 5 minutes early so that I can check my audio and video within the platform a little bit before I actually go live. And most of again, the tools and software will allow you to check your video, check your software, and to check your lighting. So I don't know if any of you noticed, but I just today have moved where my light appears. So my lighting might look better than it's looked in the past. I have a lighting problem because I'm in an office without any windows, but it's very important that your lighting come from directly behind the computer on the other side of your computer. In the past, my lighting was coming from the side. And as you can see, it's a little shadowy here, right? I don't know why right? But now with the light right in front of me, it's a much cleaner, nicer picture. So your lighting should be coming from behind your computer, never from behind you. If you are sitting in front of a window, you need to move because you will be a silhouette. They won't be able to see your face. Move yourself so that you are facing, the window is facing you. Your face is to the window is okay, but do not put a bright light or anything behind you. Likewise, if you're in a room, let me show you how bad this looks. This is what I would look like if I didn't have my extra light on in my office. It's just way too dark. And so you want to make sure that you've got a light that is coming forward because otherwise it looks really poor. Make sure the lighting comes from the front. It's really important. I think it's important to also note that you have to be in a quiet location. The front of my house, I get traffic going by and a lot of fire engines. And so I never want to do anything in the front of my house because I know there's going to be that traffic. Um, and I've also, when I'm recording something or I know I'm going to be on a video call, I put a sign up outside my office so the whole family can see it. Mom's on video, quiet. And I put the times on there. Not that they'll read it, but at least if they do see it, I'm pretty sure they will abide by that.
Um, I have a question. Carolyn is actually prepping for an in-person interview that she's having tomorrow morning, and she's curious about the primary aspects she should focus on today. And she says she started prepping yesterday. I don't know if you want to come back to that. And then I have a comment about backgrounds. What is your thought about using the company's logo or brand as a background?
Um, I have not seen people, unless you have a true good green screen behind you, I don't like the virtual backgrounds because inevitably people don't look real. You can see part of their hair coming off or their arm is disattached. I don't, and I think it uses a lot of bandwidth. So please don't use the virtual background. I just don't think that that is stable enough or professional enough to use unless you've got a green screen, and most of us don't have that. The first question was what? I missed that, Stacy.
So, Carolyn's actually prepping for an
In
in-person interview she's having tomorrow morning and is curious about the primary things she should focus on now. She started her prep yesterday.
Okay. Yeah, I think that we'll go through some of that. We'll go through the rest of the questions, and I'll just make sure that I come back to that and cover that as well. One of the things that I want you to notice is that I actually have one of these things on, and you don't. These were like $15. I like them for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't hear background noise, and the quality of my microphone is so much better. You can hear me so much better. Let me just know if you I don't know if you can now hear me, but the quality may not be as good because I'm using my microphone from my computer, right? So is there a difference? I think the quality is usually better. If you don't have one of those, these earbuds will work just as well. Just make sure that they have a microphone. I think that the quality even of an earbud microphone is better than the quality of audio that comes from your speakers on your computer. So let's talk about dress for the occasion because I think that a lot of people worry and wonder about that. Um, you only have one chance to make a first impression. You do not have to go to the company's facility to have this interview in most cases right now. But even if you were going, the rule of thumb is dress one level above what they would wear for an average work day. So if the average work day, my son just interviewed for a job at a boat marina, and no, he did not wear a coat and tie, right? He wore his khakis and a and a just a button down. No, it wasn't even a button down shirt and a sweatshirt because normally people would be wearing their bathing suit and jeans and really. So he was dressing one level, just one level above. If the normal dress is business casual, which means people are wearing, nice slacks and some sort of business attire for or something on top, I would still dress one level above that, which is maybe a nicer shirt and nicer slacks than what you would wear to work normally. Um, if you're at, in a salary job and you're, have people reporting into you or you're meeting with clients, then I think it's still appropriate today for men to wear a blazer and for women to wear either a blazer or a nicely put together outfit that they would get dressed up to wear, not evening gown dressed up, but if they were going out somewhere, something nice to wear. So I think that you can never really overdress for an interview. I think that you could make a bad impression if you underdress. And so the same is true online. Even though they're just seeing you from in a video interview from the waist up, there's something about getting all dressed up head to toe that makes you feel good about yourself. So take the extra time and effort to put on an outfit that makes you feel really good and confident. And I think that you'll do well in that. That will can't go wrong. The next thing that I want to talk about, and I skipped over, is the camera and so there's this one person who, no matter when we interview, is not really on camera. Where your camera that your camera is capturing from your shoulders up, right? That's what should be in play, in view. And if that means you have to put a couple of books underneath your computer, your camera, your lens, whatever, prop it up, make sure that your camera is at eye level, right? That's all you need to do. Make sure your camera is at eye level and put a book. And the other thing is to talk into the camera. We're so tempted, and I'm guilty of this too. You can see I'm not looking at the camera. I'm looking at the side panel here of everybody else who's here. But my eyes should always be on the camera. I should be. You can tell when I'm looking into the lens. It's a much different. You almost feel like I'm talking to you. And so I've known people who have put a post-it note around their camera lens, or they put googly eyes around their camera lens on their camera. They have done all kinds of things to make sure that they are looking at the camera. Right, that's the most important thing. You can also, another trick is have your materials easily accessible. So the way I have my office set up, I have a whole wall on the other side of my camera near my light that has all of the important notes of the things that I'm going to be talking about. So you can't even really tell that I'm looking at those things. But I've also known people who put sticky notes around their computer screen of all the key points they want to make, the questions they want to ask. So that you can absolutely, the wonderful thing about video interviews is that you've got all kinds of opportunities to have cheat sheets and notes around you that aren't as easily to keep aren't as easy to keep if you don't on video. So put all of those questions and have all your cheat sheets and your googly eyes and keep looking at that camera. Okay. Um, During the interview, we talked about some of these things already. I had to, but get there a little bit early, about 5 or so minutes early, so that you can check your audio, check your video, make sure the lighting is okay, and that you're not rushing in like at that minute. So you're the first person there. That's absolutely fine. They'll turn it on when they're ready. Look at the camera when you're speaking. I you I can't recommend that you have water or something to drink beside you. It just looks so awful, unprofessional if you see somebody drinking during an interview. We get parched, I know that, but it's only the video angle that I have of you. I don't see your whole body. I don't see what else is going on. And so if the camera is solely focused on you drinking your water because you're nervous, That's dangerous. Sure, have that water there in case you have a coughing fit or something, but please don't drink on camera. It just doesn't send the right message. It means that it might send the message that you're not totally serious about this job interview. So don't drink. Focus on the conversation. I know it's tempting to have your phone going off, so I always, like I would in a regular interview, I turn my phone all the way off. Off, 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 so I don't hear the buzz or and I don't hear the ding. Nothing happened. I don't want to be distracted when I'm doing an interview or I'm on camera. So I turn everything off altogether. Because you want to give your full attention to the conversation in this interview. And if you're going to go, if the the interviewer is asking, doing a lot of the talking, they're giving you an overview of the company, go ahead and mute yourself, right? You don't want the risk of somebody jumping into the camera or screaming at you from the background or picking up the lawnmower in the background of the snow blower or the plow. If you know you're not going to be talking for a while, just like you've done here, go ahead and mute yourself. And at the end of the interview, right, be sure that you are logged out of the platform. Oftentimes we're just so relieved to be done with the interview that we don't click out and log out of the software. Make doubly, triply sure that you're logged out. And then take action on anything. If you said you were going to follow up and send them any information, or they asked you to take a quiz, or they were going to send you information, whatever action you're going to take, take it as soon as possible after the interview, and always send a thank you message, whether it's paper and or electronic. So it's very easy to send a very quick thank you email, and you absolutely should do that. It's also very nice to send a follow-up email through the regular US mail. That way you can say, I've addressed their sense of urgency in getting them something immediately, and you can be a little bit more thoughtful and reflect a little bit more on the interview and send them an email, handwritten or a typewritten letter after the fact. There's something nice about doing too, if you can do too. That piece of paper that somebody gets through the US mail is a rarity today. You know that, and I know that, right? We get very little mail. Um, but it also has staying power. I have a stack of mail on my desk, and I have a stack of thank you cards on my shelf that I'm not going to throw out. I might go through them. They're visible, they're tangible. I don't ever go back and look through emails, do you? Unless you absolutely have to. So after I've read an email, I tend to delete it and then it's gone. And then they don't know what you had to say. So I would recommend doing both if that's possible. Oh, Laura, I'm glad you're asking. I'm just looking at the questions now about light rings. They're all pretty similar, and you can get a very inexpensive one at Walmart or on Amazon. You can get one for under $20. But I don't have a light ring. I'm just telling you, I have a painter's lamp. Really, I should show you one day. It's very funny. I've got a painter's lamp behind my desk that we already had around the house, and I just put a light bulb in it with a piece of paper in front of it. So you don't even have to spend any money for a light ring because I'm just using a regular old lamp. That's a good question because I'm cheap. And I think you all should be cheap too. Okay, so that is what we do before, during, and after a video interview. Are there any questions about the nuances of video, and what we need to be paying attention to? Okay. So, but that doesn't mean you can't ask questions. If you come up with a question, we'll definitely talk about that. So now I want to talk about some of the common job interview questions that you're going to be getting. And if you could just do me a favor and type in what is that question or questions that you dread being asked in an interview. We all have them. I know what they are, but tell me that question that you just don't like being asked in an interview. What is that? Yeah, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Tell me about yourself. Robin, I'll come back to that. Robin's asking about assessing engagement on video interview. Why did you leave your previous job? I don't know, yeah, almost every question should be anticipated, so I'm not sure which ones are unanticipated. How does this job fit with your career plans? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why the short stints in previous roles? Okay, so guess what I'm gonna say? What I want you to make sure you write down all of those questions that you don't like being asked, because I guarantee that question you don't want to answer, you're going to be asked. So we need a good answer for that, right? So tell me about yourself. What is your greatest strength and weakness? What are your salary requirements? Why should we hire you? Tell me about a time when. Those you're going to get all of these questions. Absolutely guarantee it. And so therefore you need a good answer. And that's a whole workshop in itself. Um, I have written articles on how to answer a lot of these questions, but one of my favorite books, um, do you have this at your library? Um, 60 Seconds and You're Hired by Robin Ryan.
I don't think I do have that one,
Okay.
but I can get it.
I think you should get it. Um, it is one of my favorite books, and if you can't find it at your local library, I bet the Owl library system has it, so you can get it from another library. It's really not one of those books that, as a job seeker, you need to buy, because you're going to use it for reference. Once you've gotten the information, you're probably not going to need it a lot. Again, you can just go check it out from the library. But it's 60 Seconds by Robin Ryan. It's it's going to answer all of the interview questions that you have, um, with sample answers and some very basic logic. The reason that I love this book by Robin Ryan is that the basic premise of it, 60 seconds and you're hired, is that any and every answer that you give in an interview should last no longer than 60 seconds. Okay. That's what you need to know. Every answer you give should fit within a 1 minute window. If you are talking for longer than 1 minute, the person has lost focus. They're not paying attention to you anymore. And if they're not paying attention, then they're not hearing what you're saying. So your challenge, and we're going to talk about how to do this, is to give a 1 minute answer. But the tell me about yourself answer is another one that a lot of people struggle with. Again, it's 1 minute. 1 minute. What are the three most important reasons that um, I should hire you, that the person should hire you? What are the three most important things that you want the person sitting across the table from you to know about you? Just three. If you go and give your whole big long 1 minute full of all of this information, they're not going to remember it all. It's too much information. So just focus on the three most important things that make you qualified for that job and you think you'd be a good fit for that job and why you want to work for that company. So tell me about yourself, your greatest strength and weak. There's real strategy for answering, but my message to you all today is whatever question you're afraid or you don't like being asked, you need a strong answer to ready. Write it down and then practice saying it out loud. So there was one person who said, um, why do you have so many short stints on your resume? Well, you need to answer that question in a way that won't shoot you in the foot. So you could say, you know what, I'm not surprised that you're asking me that question. A lot of people have. There have been each company has been a little bit different for its reason for letting me go. But what I know is that at this point in my life, what I am looking for is for a job that is going to both meet my needs and be a good fit for what I'm looking for and where I have the opportunity to really make the company look good and make a contribution. Right. So I don't want you to make all of these excuses and go into a lot of detail for any one of those jobs. It's really, they just want to know what was going on. Was there a reason that your life was unstable and you've overcome that now? That you weren't really good at evaluating the jobs back then, and now you've really learned about what's important to you and what you're looking for in a job, and you're much wiser than you were. So you wouldn't give that whole answer because part of that answer shot yourself in the foot. Well, I didn't know how to look for a job back then, so I just took any job that came my way. Like that made you look dumb. right? You don't want to look that way. You want to say, I've learned a lot from those 3 jobs. And one of the things that I've learned is that finding the right job is really important. And I didn't pay enough attention to that earlier in my career. So those are some of the ways in which you can turn that negative into more of a positive. But that can't happen on the fly. You really have to think about it, plan it, practice it, and then deliver it. So all of those questions you need to write out an answer to, and then I need you to practice saying it out loud, because what the way we write and the way we speak aren't the same. I don't want you to sound like you are reading what you've written. I want you to sound like you're speaking what you're thinking. Here's the other thing about interviews and human beings and the way the brain is programmed. We remember stories. The reason we remember stories is because they evoke some sort of emotion. And this goes way, way back to the early cavemen, right? When they were telling stories around the campfire, the only way they could remember them was verbally. They didn't have words to remember things by. And stories carried a message, and stories conveyed an emotion. So that is sort of the early beginnings of why storytelling is so important to who we are and how we remember things. And they're still important today. So every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Your stories in an interview also have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And this is really helpful for you to remember if you are a rambler. You're one of those people that goes on and on and on and tells all these things and they don't remember what the question was and you're still talking 5 minutes later. Having a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end means you know when you reach the end, you're done talking. And for those of you that are a little shy or introverted and don't really like talking about yourself, having a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end means that you're going to include all of the really vital information. And you can't stop talking until you've included all parts of the information. So, um, here are some of the examples of the questions that you will be asked that will require you to give a story as an answer. Give me an example of a time when you tried to accomplish something and failed. Share an example of a time when you showed initiative or took the lead. Tell me about a recent situation in which you had to deal with an upset customer or coworker. Give me an example of a time when you motivated others, right? All of those require that you use a specific example of a time. You should anticipate every single one of these questions. They're gonna come, or some version of them will come. And so you, as the smart job seeker that you are going to deliver your answer in a story format, in a star story format. Every answer you deliver will tell what the situation was, what the task was that you took on, the actions that you took, and the result. Let me give you an example of what a star story might look like. So the ST can oftentimes be combined into sort of one sentence. While I was working on a time-sensitive client project, I found the printer was jammed. That was the situation and sort of the challenge or task at hand. The action I took was I reloaded the paper bins and then followed the instruction, well, followed the prayer. I reloaded the paper bins and then followed the printer's error instructions. And the result and within minutes, the printer was back online and the final client report was proofed and delivered ahead of schedule. And as a bonus, I was able to deliver the other print jobs to the owners that had been stuck in the printer at the same time. If I told you this story, I want you to type in the chat box. If this was the first story I told you in an interview, what would you know about me? If this is the only thing I told you, what would you know about me? Yep, that I'm a problem solver. Absolutely. What else would you know? A team player. Yep. I take initiative. Yep. I don't stress us easily. Calm under pressure. You guys are awesome. Yep. I think on my feet. Can follow instructions. helpful to coworkers. Okay, you can stop. Right. Did I use that I was calm under pressure or that I follow instruction well? I never even used those words in this story. How did you know this about me? Pretty amazing what these stories do and how much information to a complete stranger. Yes, show don't tell. Absolutely. How much information comes across through these stories, more than we could put into words. Right? Because we've been in a similar situation. We're listening to what's happening. So, what I want you to do is to tell star stories in your interview answer because it's going to convey so much more about you, your soft skills, all of these really wonderful things that you can't possibly put into words in an interview. So the trick is to come up with enough star stories, right, for all of these different situations. Um, no, thank you. So let me come back and address Robin's question. Does the 60-second rule differ if you're interviewing for management director level role? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, not at all. You're as a director, as a manager, you need to have skills in being able to concisely summarize a message, right? So this star story, whatever your star story is, will always fit within a 1 minute time frame. That doesn't mean that's the end of your answer. So what will happen, and this could happen at any level to anyone, is if I want to know more about what kind of copier this was, or what kind of paper did I put back into the copier, the interviewer could ask follow-up stories if they want more information. And that doesn't count against your 1 minute. You've given your 1 minute answer. The rest of the conversation is on the interviewer's clock, right? So if they want to know more detail about this story, then they're going to ask you. And you can answer, and your answer should be concise, but that 1 minute applies to this story. And that gives the interviewer free rein to dive in and dig for more information. And I hope that makes sense, right? Um, So in the handout that you all are getting, I have a list of, it might be 50, maybe 60 behavioral based interview questions that you can answer, create stories from. So even if I go back to these stories, if you come up with answers to these four stories, give me an example of a time you tried to accomplish something and failed. Share with an example of where you took initiative. Give me a recent situation where you had to deal with an upset customer and you had to give an example of time you motivated others. If you come up with these four stories, you're well on your way to being able to answer probably 20 or 30 different interview questions. Because that story that you come up with, so time that you took initiative, that's probably going to work for other interview answers as well. Tell me about a time where you took the lead. Give me an example of a time where you worked collaboratively with other people. Tell me about a time when, so one story could potentially answer several other interview questions. And here's the other way to come up with stories. If you have that, for the person who has the interview coming up, I want you to go through the job description, the job posting that you have, and I want you to come up with a story for each requirement in the job. So one of the job requirements might say, must be able to manage your time well. Come up with a specific example of how you managed your time well on the job. So there was some sort of crisis going on and you had to prioritize your work. How did you go about doing that and what was the result, right? So go through each line of the job description, job posting, and come up with a specific example, a story of a time where you've met that requirement. Must be able to write summaries and must be able to write executive summaries. Tell me about a time where you had to put together an executive summary, a star story. This was the situation and task. These were the actions I took. First I did this, then I did this, then I did that. And as a result, this is how the summary came to be. Okay. So for each one of the requirements, create a story, and that will ensure you are prepared for any question that would come up in an interview. And this is what's also going to happen. There are going to be requirements in that job that you don't have experience doing. At least it gives you a first the chance to think about, ooh, I don't have this requirement. What am I going to tell them if they ask me about that? Or it gives you a chance to think, well, I don't have that skill, but I've done something similar. So why don't I just tell them about that? Because that's the best I've got. So it allows you to plan for that and come up with a backup plan or a substitute. Yes, you can absolutely take notes during a video interview and you should always take notes during an interview because that person sitting on the other side of the camera is absolutely taking notes, right? They can't remember everything. They're human, you're human. So absolutely, you can take notes. I want you to take notes. And if you have a problem, you don't feel comfortable taking notes, you can ask the interviewer if it's okay, if they mind you taking notes. Would it be all right with you if I took notes during the interview? Right? That just gives you the permission that you need to do that. So, if you came up with two or three answers to each of these questions, you would be in really good shape. Absolutely. Absolutely. When I was teaching people, I said, you know what, as you go through your career, I want you to keep track of your accomplishments. And so when you get to the point of having an interview, if you have their 20 best accomplishments, 20 best stories, 20 is about what you'll need. If you've got 20 for an interview, you are golden. Because a lot of them are interchangeable, but 20 different stories, you're good. Yep, really good advice. And in that handout that you're going to be getting when Stacy sends that out, you will find that there are probably 50-ish behavioral based questions like those four that are there. So you can give those to somebody that you know and have them read them to you, and you can practice interviewing. Here are some of the questions, and they're also in the handout that you're going to be getting from Stacy. Here are questions you can and should ask because I want you to feel like your questions that you know about enough about this job and the work environment and the manager and the people that you're going to be working alongside. I want you to feel like you know the answer to those questions before you walk into work the first day. It's stressful enough to start a new job. Can you imagine not knowing the answers to some of the basic questions about how you're going to be doing your job? That's just not that's not right to you. It's not right to the company. And I will tell you that a lot of interviewers are not good. They've had a lot of interview experience and they may forget who they told what information to. So it's really up to you to make sure that you get all of these answers. Here they are, right? And so these questions are different for different parts of things. Like some are testing the culture of the company, others are testing who the coworkers are. So others help you understand what's really going to be expected of you in the job beyond the job requirements. What are the three main factors you'll be using to determine the right person for the job? If you ask that question right up front, does that help you understand some of the stories or things that you're going to want to highlight about yourself during the interview? That would require a little thinking on your feet. But if they say, time management, getting along well with others and something else are really important, then you're going to want to make sure you tell those stories during the interview. So here, what goals do you expect the person to take who takes this job to achieve during the first 30, 60, 90 days? That helps you understand how quickly they want you to come up to speed and what things are really important. So these are all really great questions, and I want you to be prepared to ask about five or so throughout the course of the interview. Do not wait till the very end to ask these questions. Ask them at the appropriate time during the interview. And usually after you answer a question, you have the opportunity to ask a question. Ask a related question if you've got the floor. So those are all in your handouts that you're going to be getting. And I'm looking at the clock and I know that I'm getting near the end of time here and I think I'm almost done. There are 2 questions that you always, 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 always need to ask at the end of every interview, and these are them. These are those 2 questions. What are the next steps in the process, and when should I expect to hear from you? If you ask those questions at the end of every interview, you know what your next step will be. You will not hear from them whatever they say that time frame is. So if they say you'll hear something from us in 2 weeks, you're not going to hear from them in 2 weeks, but you will follow up with them in 2 weeks and say, based on our interview, you mentioned you might have a decision or might be ready for the next steps at this point in time. I haven't heard from you, but I wanted to follow up and let you know that I was interested. There you go, right? 2 weeks. You're taking the lead, you're showing your interest. And then that thank you. At the end of every interview, please, please, please send a thank you. That's going to help the interviewer understand your level of interest. It shows your communication skills, it shows your professionalism, it shows your maturity. It does a lot. So please send that interview, both email and hard copy if you can do that. And look it, there we go. So, so there were some questions in there that helped you evaluate the culture of the company. What kind of things do you do to reward your employees? What kinds of things do employees do outside of work together? How have you mentored people to perform in this job? So there's some questions that you can ask, and I think they'll be on that list of questions that I send. As far as reading people visually in an interview, in general, we have to watch their body language. When there's not a lot of body language going on, it is really hard. But as you can see, I'm always sort of looking over here in my side panel, and I'm looking at Stacy's head, and because I can't even see her mouth because she's masked. But when I see Stacy doing this, I know I'm on target. I know she's watching. If I see Stacy like looking off in some other direction, I'm looking at her more carefully to see what's going on. Is she sidetracked? Is there something else going on? Have I lost her? Is there a problem with the technology? So I do check in on Stacy to see what she's doing because she's my litmus test. If she's not paying attention and she's looking elsewhere, then if that goes on for a long period of time, I'm probably going to stop and say, "Is everything okay, Stacy?" Because I'm worried, am I not coming across? Did she lose connection with me? Is there something else that's pressing, bothering her from her work in her situation? Because the bottom line is, if Stacy's not looking at the camera, she's not paying attention to me. And if she's not paying attention to me, she's not hearing what I'm saying. And if she's not hearing what I'm saying, then my message isn't getting across. So I can stop the interview, and I would have stopped the interview to say, "Is everything okay?"
Mhm. That's a good idea too, because you don't know if on their end they've muted themselves to be polite and then maybe a situation has arisen, but you don't know that because you can't hear it.
Right. So whoever asked that question, there are some verbal cues that we can look at and would pay attention to. So absolutely. And as a job seeker, as the candidate, it is absolutely okay to ask if everything is okay. If you see that the person isn't paying attention. So are there any other questions that we can answer? I know we're a little past the 1 hour mark, and I'm sensitive to all of the things that you all have going on in your day. Thanks, Robin. I'm glad that worked. Anything else that I can help? Any other questions that people have? There's so much written about interviewing. I think the key is to really pay attention to some of these video things that we're looking at the camera. We've got good lighting, that we feel comfortable with the technology. There's nothing more stressful than using a new piece of technology and not knowing how to mute or how to type a comment. So the more practice you have using these systems, the easier it will be for you.
I just want to let folks know that if you're in the area, I just ordered 2 copies of
Oh,
the
good.
60 Seconds in Your Hired book because we only had one in the system. So there'll be three now altogether.
Excellent.
And this has been recorded. I will send the link out to everyone along with the handouts, which will be found in the description of the recording in YouTube. So the little box that's under the movie is where the handout links go. So Thank you, Hannah, for this great series.
Oh, it was so much fun. I love doing this, and I'm glad they're recorded so that they're going to live on for other people to refer back to. And thank you all so much for making this more fun for me because it's much better to have comments and to be able to respond to questions than to just talk at the camera. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.